Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel where we share safe real estate investment tips, talk about property law, and share credible real estate investment opportunities here in Nigeria. Basically, every video on this channel is an asset to real estate investors and property buyers. Finally, on this channel, every subscriber is family, a family of millionaire real estate investors. Welcome. Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Rei Ltd and I'm a real estate entrepreneur as well as a property lawyer here in Nigeria. Alright, so very quickly today, I'm going to be talking about two major ways of determining whether a property is one you should buy or not. Now, these two ways as well are going to help you determine whether these two properties are fraudulent, or they are based on scam or not. So basically, with these two key ways, you can safely determine whether you want to invest, you want to risk such transaction or not. I'm going to be as quick as possible, as brief as possible. But I hope that you'll be able to get the point at the end of the day. My name is Rei Ltd, and I'm a real estate entrepreneur as well as a property lawyer here in Nigeria. All right, so one of the things, the two basic things are: number one, location and documentation. Location and documentation. You don't have, you want to do real estate, you want to do land property transactions. One of the key things you must pay critical attention to, the two critical things you must pay attention. Not the word too critical or too major. It means that there are other factors you certainly will have to consider. But for the purpose of this video, I'm talking about these two major ones. The first one is location, and the second one is the documentation. Now, the location of the land matters a lot. I like to always say that land is not, real estate transactions or land transactions are not just about how good the place of the land is, the location is. It's also important that you look at the documentation to be sure that this is what you want to proceed or what you want to do, right? And I'm going to try to use two stories to drive home the point so that you would get the gist, right? All right, so one of the things that the location does for you is that it helps you to know the pricing. It helps you to know whether you should do this or not. And let me just go straight to the stories and then see how to now summarize this, and you will get the lesson and you get the gist at the end of the video, right? But please make sure that you stay to the end. And of course, if you haven't subscribed, do it to subscribe, stay on the channel and turn on notification, and just be sure that you are here, because the information that comes to this channel as often as possible are key. They can save you several millions if you are investing back here in Nigeria, or you're already in Nigeria and you are investing in Nigeria, right? Okay, so first, I need to help you understand that the location of a land, the physical land itself, and the documentation are two equal parts that make up one unit. There are two separate parts that make up one unit. If you joke with the documentation, you joke with the land. If you joke with the land, you joke with the documentation. Together, they make up what you are paying for. If one of them has an issue, then there is a problem. If the other one has an issue, then there is a problem. All right. So for instance, you are buying the land and the documentation is good, and the land itself doesn't have an access route, then that is a problem. That will affect your land. Or possibly your land is locked in by some other persons around. And there's no road, as it were. That's a problem. I've seen cases of, I remember one client who reached out to me via Facebook, one man who reached out to me via Facebook. I wanted to sell his land because of that particular issue. I also remember one of these days I was looking for a client who were engaged to look for a property for a client, and this property had very good documents, everything was on point, and of course we usually insist on going to see for ourselves the location of the land, and upon getting there we realized that there was no access road. The man kept on pointing, this is the access road, this place is going to lead to the land. And I just didn't want to argue at that point. Of course, I wasn't. There was no need to argue at that point. But he was pointing that this is the access road. But I was seeing somebody's beacon there. So it means that certainly there's going to be an issue one of these days between the person who owns that place and the person. So at the end of the day, they might end up buying that place from that person. That is if the person is even open to sell. All right. So already it is obvious that there's going to be an issue as far as road is concerned, and we have to strictly stay away. Right. So that's one of the things that understanding all of these details would help you, especially with respect to the location and the documentation. All right. So like I was saying, the document can be good and the location is bad. You have to consider all of that. All right. So one of these days, a client of mine reached out to me. He is a friend, close one. He may be watching this video, or he will watch this video. But with permission, I like to share so that other persons will learn from what he experienced. And this is not as a way of is not based on mockery or for any reason. I wouldn't do that. All right. So he wanted to buy land, and apparently we're close, but for some reason he made payment without letting me know. And location was good. I visited the land several months after. Location was good. He made payment, and upon seeing at the point he wanted to make payment, I looked at the title document. At the point he wanted to do documentation, I looked at the title document that was brought, and I asked to see who was the person whose name was on the document. And he said that he didn't know, and I requested to reach out to the person who he made payment to, and I asked him if he's the one whose name is on the document, and he said his name wasn't the one, or he wasn't the one whose name was on the document. And I asked him who is the person, and he said that's his family relative, right? An elder in the family who is dead, and he got his share of the land. And I'm like, okay, if you got a share of the land, then what you should be presenting to my client is a deed of sharing or allocation, a family allocation or sharing, basically, that shows that this man died. What position are you? There are a number of questions that I asked on that very day to really establish the fact that there won't be any issue for my client, right? And at the end of the day, he said, okay, he's going to get his lawyer. I even volunteered and told my client I'll prepare the document for him, a deed of confirmation or a deed of sharing, connecting the family members to him before he can properly or competently sell from to my client. All right, so we'll have a document connecting everybody, and that's where I always talk about the issue of the root of title. That is critical. The issue of root of title is critical to every transaction. Having understanding of who you bought from, and from part A to B to C to D and all of that, it is critical. And you can check out my other videos and you would understand what I'm talking about, right? Okay, so sorry, I'm trying to rush, please. I'm trying to rush. Okay, so he was okay, no problem. We will get his lawyer to prepare the document. And at the end of the day, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, nothing was being said. I kept on asking him what's happening. To cut the long story short, he had already started building and somebody started claiming ownership of the land. And up till date, at the point of recording this video, he doesn't still have a document for that land. Later on, issues came up, and he started saying that the person he bought from and all of that. The story wasn't straight at the end of the day. So what am I trying to drive at? To summarize it, at the point he was talking about him doing C of O for my client. How do you sell a land and you are doing C of O for a client? It just doesn't make any sense. Anyway, that has happened. Issue is still on. There's no solution right now, and it's sad because this could have been avoided, right? But apparently, certain things were not done, and that is where we are. So what I'm driving at is he was focused on the location. Location was good. Everything was good. The price appeared to be good to him, right? But he didn't pay any attention to the document, and that is where we are. Second story. I was doing investigation for a client who wanted to buy property back here in Nigeria, and upon visiting the location, the first thing I saw, location was good. First thing I saw was that I told the client representative straight up that this property is too cheap. And how did I get to know that the property was cheap? Because yes, we're in the business, right? And and we understand the environment. We understand, even if you take me to another location, I've traveled outside Benin, where I'm presently resident, to do property transactions for clients, and I know when a property is too cheap or too expensive. There's always an idea of how this would be a fair price. So I told the client's representative straight up that this property is too cheap, all right, and then it will require serious investigation. So we proceeded further to do investigation for that particular property, and in the course of when document was presented, I realized that there was no date on the approval on the document that was presented, title document or alleged title document that was presented, and I started interrogating in that regard, and started asking me questions like, um, what do I need a date for that approvals don't come with dates? And I'm like, what do you mean? How do you tell me, what do you mean by approvals don't come with dates? He was arguing. I mean, he wanted to teach me my job, right? But I told him that it's a very simple thing, right? If we're talking about for registration purposes, that is possibly understandable, even though that has its own argument. But beyond that, we need to be able to lay foundation or trace or establish our client's root of title. It doesn't make sense to just acquire land and you don't know when your predecessor in title took possession of that land. That doesn't make any sense. So by the time the property becomes subject matter of dispute, and you need to establish whether when this person took possession or when the person is bought, you are stuck, and you don't know when your predecessor in title took possession. I'm sorry, your predecessor in title is someone who bought before you, right? And then you need to be able to establish the root of title. I've already explained that in one of my videos. All right, so I decided to put that on hold, and then we went further. I asked to see the original document of this particular of the land, and then he got pissed. I mean, he got angry and walked out. What do I want to do with the original? I said, it's just for sightseeing. We're not taking it. We understand that you have 500 by 200 I mean 500 by 200 plots, and we're not taking it. We want to see and compare what you are giving to us. And he got pissed, got angry. I mean, what do you want to do with my originals and all of that? I'm like, you are a land seller, you want to sell a land, and you are getting pissed because I'm asking to see the originals of the document. What does that tell you? And later on, one of his colleagues walked up to him, brought him back into the parlor where we're sitting, and then they ended up they will get it after 2 days or so. And eventually, he as I was about driving out, myself and my colleague about driving out, he said we should hold on, and he wanted to bring the title documents. If he check if he, because his house wasn't far. He came back about 10 minutes later and then told me that let's go to somebody's house. I went to this person's house. Upon getting there, he said let's go to the person's lawyer's house office. We got to the person's lawyer's office. They brought out some title documents, but they didn't show me. They said it wasn't there. We drove back to his house, and at that point they brought out another approval, another document carrying another person's name, that we should use that one. And I'm like, let's cut the long story short. Now the location was good, but how did we determine, or we saw that the price was too cheap? At this point, we have not concluded, but in my opinion, I already told the client that in my opinion, this is not a deal you want to go through with. I'm not comfortable with it, right? Because the demeanor, everything didn't make any sense. We also look at the person who is buying here, the person who is selling here. Who is he? So looking at the whole thing critically, location was good, price appeared to be good, but the price was a red flag alert. It gave us a red flag alert to really looking closer to be sure that some 5 persons have not bought it already, right? So at the end of the day, the location is not enough. How good the location is not enough. You need to consider the documentation. All right. So considering the fact that this documentation is bad, it has to. 2 things are involved. It's either you stay away. It's possible that the documentation can be regularized, then let it be regularized. For my first client, it could have been regularized, and in the course of regularizing, he would have discovered that he was not the owner of something. So 2 things could happen: either you stay away from it if the documentation is bad, or if it is, forgive me with respect, let me use the word regularizable. If it is regularizable, then you regularize it. If it is not, then you stay away from it. And who can help you determine that? Is your lawyer, right? So what I'm driving at is with understanding the location of a land and the documentation, you need to treat both of them importantly and collaboratively, together, so that you don't have an issue at any point in the transaction. All right, so this is what I have for you today. I believe, I know that this was so much value, because being in the field of business, I understand that there are just very tiny details that some of us don't get to understand, and that end up making us lose millions of naira in real estate transactions. And that is why I'm doing this. That is why this video is brought to you by Fortreal Rei Ltd, a real estate company registered here in Nigeria to help you prevent all of these issues, carry out real estate transactions for you, sale, purchase, investment, and real estate advisory, and all of those things. All right, so we encourage you to stay safe. Don't just push out money out there. Be sure that you are investing right. Be sure that you're investing safe and you're investing smart. Thank you so much. Again, my name is Raymond Ijoma, and I'm a real estate entrepreneur as well as a property lawyer here in Nigeria. Do enjoy an amazing day. Bye bye.